Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
Today we're digging into a really unique stack of source materials. We've got clandestine files, intelligence reports, even personal accounts.
And they all point to this one extraordinary figure, Stephen Metcalfe.
Stephen Metcalfe. No, he's not exactly a household name, is he?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
He's almost like a historical ghost. You won't find statues or big public records. But the evidence we've pieced together shows he was absolutely pivotal in two major crises of the 20th century.
And both centered on Russia, interestingly enough.
Exactly. Decades apart, but both tied to the fate of Russia.
So our mission today is to follow this thread. We're talking about a journey over 50 years.
Yeah, starting with the really intense espionage of World War II. Occupy Europe, 1940. Metcalfe was deep undercover, basically engineering chaos to try and save Britain.
And then jumping forward to 1991, Moscow again. But this time, he's an elder statesman right in the middle of the coup attempt against Gorbachev, almost the collapse of the Soviet Union.
It's an incredible arc. We're going to explore these two interventions, these two moments where he seems to have, well, shifted history.
And also look at the personal cost, because these sources suggest it was staggering.
Absolutely. Let's maybe set the scene with the endpoint first.
Yeah.
The frame story, 1991.
Okay, so August 1991, Metcalfe is back in Moscow. He's an ambassador now.
Right. And the city is absolutely on a knife edge. You've got the communist hardliners, this State Committee for the State of Emergency.
A GKCHP?
Yes, them. They've launched a coup against Gorbachev. It's violent, it's sudden.
And the sources, they paint this picture of just complete paralysis in government, don't they? Tanks rolling into Red Square.
Oh, yeah. Tanks surrounding the parliament, building the White House City Hall, the TV stations, key communication points. It's terrifying.
Like the worst fears of totalitarianism coming back.
But with even higher stakes this time. Because the sources are clear, the U.S. National Security Council back in Washington is essentially frozen.
Why? What was the holdup?
Fear. Pure fear. They knew the coup plotters, these desperate men, had control of the Cheget.
The nuclear briefcase.
The nuclear briefcase, the launch codes. The NSC was terrified that any move, any intervention could trigger, well, the unthinkable. Nuclear war.
Wow. So that's the crisis Metcalfe walks into in 91. A seasoned diplomat facing potential Armageddon.
Exactly. But the Metcalfe we meet first in our sources, the 1940 version, he's a completely different beast.
Right. He's operating under deep cover. Daniel Eigen.
Daniel Eigen.
Yep.
And the cover was, frankly, brilliant. Wealthy Argentine industrialist.
Bit of a playboy.
Oh, absolutely. Sophisticated, incredibly handsome, spoke 5 languages, fluently Swiss educated.
And the cover had roots in reality, didn't it? The family business.
Yes, that was key. His family, the Metcalfes, genuinely did have significant, verifiable business holdings in Argentina. His brother Howard was running them completely legitimately.
So the cover wasn't just paper thin. It had real substance.
Exactly, which made it so much stronger.
And the genius of it, as you said, this Eigen persona, he's this frivolous bachelor going to all the high society parties in Paris.
While secretly being this American agent, running networks, dealing with life and death intelligence work.
It's that contrast. Make the cover so visible, so demanding, nobody thinks you have time for anything else.
It's classic deep cover tradecraft.
Oh, yeah.
And he was apparently very good at it.
Okay, let's dive into that first phase then. Paris, 1940. Metcalfe as Eigen. He's not trying to save Moscow yet. He's trying to save London.
Right. The context here is absolutely critical. Occupied Paris in 1940. Think austerity, rationing, curfews, this sort of constant underlying gloom.
Except not everywhere.
Exactly. There were these pockets, these islands of just glittering, almost defiant luxury. And Metcalfe, as Eigen, had to be right in the middle of one of the most exclusive, the Hotel du Châtelet.
This is a private mansion, right? Owned by Comte du Châtelet.
Yes, a hugely wealthy industrialist, and crucially, a prominent minister in the collaborationist Vichy government.
So rubbing shoulders with the enemy, basically.
Absolutely. The sources describe the Avenue Foch, where the mansion was, as windswept and bleak under the occupation. But inside the Châtelet, it was non-stop champagne, swing music, carefree laughter. It was where tout Paris gathered German officers, Vichy officials, nervous diplomats from neutral countries.
And Metcalfe wasn't just attending, he was part of the scene.
He had to be. Essential to it. He used his charm, his wealth, his connections to integrate himself completely. This wasn't just for show. It was vital for his operations.
Particularly for movement, right? Getting around the city.
Oh, hugely important. Seems like a small detail. But under occupation, mobility was everything. The sources really detail the transport issues.
No petrol, no taxis.
Pretty much. Only very specific people, doctors, firemen, maybe a few top actors, could get permission to drive private cars.
So how did Metcalfe manage?
His Eigen persona. He leveraged his connections, specifically with high-ranking German officers he met at these parties, like SS Standardführer Jürgen Begmann. Through them, he secured a service public license
Which allowed him
to drive his car freely, even after curfew, essential for clandestine meetings, dead drops, moving equipment, or personnel. Without that license, his work would have been almost impossible.
And the nerve center for all this work, the cave, sounds very spy novel.
It really does. But the sources describe it in quite some detail. It was basically a highly secure bunker hidden beneath a rather run-down bar.
Run by a guy named Pasquale.
That's the one. But downstairs, the operational room itself, think soundproofed, double-walled construction. It even sat on steel plates resting on thick rubber walls.
Why the rubber?
To dampen vibrations, stop any sensitive listening devices the Germans might have deployed nearby from picking up sounds from inside. It was serious stuff.
And the tech inside. This is 1940s tech, remember?
Right, pre-digital, so it gives you a real sense of the era. They had Mark XV and Paraset shortwave radios.
Tiny little things, right? For quick transmissions.
Exactly. Low power, portable. Ideal for sending coded messages quickly back to London or Washington without giving away your position for too long.
But how did they keep the messages secret?
That was the M209 cipher machine. This is a portable mechanical encryption device.
Mechanical? How did that work?
It used these adjustable key wheels, 6 of them, and a complex system of internal pins and lugs. You'd type in the plain text message, and it mechanically scrambled it based on the settings of the wheels.
And you could change the settings?
Daily. If you changed the key settings regularly, the cipher it produced was virtually unbreakable at the time for field transmissions. It was the heart of their secure communications. The cave was their lifeline.
And the man pulling the strings behind all this, Alfred Corcoran.
Corky. The spy master. The sources paint him as almost obsessively driven, apparently always munching on peppermint lifesavers.
But deadly serious about the mission.
Utterly. By 1940, you have to remember the situation. Norway, Denmark, Holland, Belgium, Luxembourg, France, all fallen to the Nazis. The British Army had just barely escaped at Dunkirk.
Britain was alone.
Effectively, yes. Corky genuinely believed, according to these accounts, that if Britain fell, the world is doomed. That was his driving fear.
And that led to his core philosophy.
A ruthless one. The individual must always be subordinate to the greater good. For the survival of freedom, as he put it, he was willing to sacrifice people, for the bigger picture.
Which sets up the next incredibly risky mission. Because Corky decides the focus needs to shift.
Right. The immediate danger was actually a betrayal within their existing network. An agent in the French petrol company knew about the cave that needed handling, but Corky already had the next step planned.
Moscow.
Corky instructs Metcalfe to get a visa. Again, using the legitimate cover of Metcalfe Industries' trade interests. Russia needed Western goods.
But the real target wasn't trade, it was a person.
Svetlana Baranova. Lana, prima ballerina at the Bolshoi Theater.
And critically, Metcalfe's former lover.
His first great love, the sources say. Corky knew this. He knew about their past relationship.
And he planned to use it.
Absolutely.
Oh.
Lana was now involved, apparently romantically, with a German diplomat in Moscow, Rudolf von Schussler.
So the plan was, Metcalfe uses his connection to Lana.
To get close to her again, gain her trust, and through her, get a read on von Schussler. See if he could be turned, perhaps. Gather intelligence.
Why was this suddenly so urgent? Why Moscow? Why von Schussler?
Because of Operation Sea Lion. Hitler's top-secret plan for the invasion of Britain. It was real, it was imminent, Corky knew about it.
The scale of it was huge, wasn't it?
Massive. 250,000 soldiers, paratroopers, amphibious landings. If Sea Lion succeeded, Britain would likely fall. America would be facing Nazi Germany alone.
So Corky felt they had to do something drastic.
Something to divert Hitler's attention. To make him look east, towards Russia instead of west, across the channel. They had to, in Corky's words, shift the course of history.
But before Metcalfe can even get to Moscow, his Paris network just collapses violently.
It unravels incredibly fast.
Yeah.
The first sign is this SD counter-espionage officer Kleist.
SD being
the Sicherheitsdienst, the SS intelligence agency. Kleist was apparently a talented violinist, very cultured, but also a ruthless Hauptsturmführer, a captain. He gets a tip-off from an informant about an RAF parachute drop in Touraine, which was one of Metcalfe's supply lines. So the hunt is closing in.
And Metcalfe needs forged papers to get out. He goes to his forger.
Ducroix,
Yeah.
a seemingly brave resistance sympathizer who ran a bookshop. Metcalfe goes there needing exit documents. They're discussing the risks.
And then the betrayal happens.
Suddenly, Ducroix pulls a Luger pistol on Metcalfe. Says something like, "I have to do my duty."
He'd been turned. Or coerced.
It's not entirely clear from the sources, but Metcalfe sees the arrest form waiting. And it's signed by Gerhard Mautner, number 2 at Gestapo headquarters on Avenue Foch. This wasn't a low-level smash. This was big. They knew who Metcalfe was, or at least who Eigen was supposed to be working for.
So when Metcalfe has to fight his way out.
He does. Kills 3 Gestapo agents in the bookshop. Escapes. But he's horrified by it. He realizes he's blown, completely exposed, a marked man.
His planned escape route is gone.
Totally compromised. He races back towards the cave, hoping to warn the others.
But he's too late.
Way too late. He gets to Pasquale's bar above the cave. It's wrecked. Stools smashed, tables overturned. The cash register is empty. Looks like a robbery, probably staged to cover the real reason for the raid.
And downstairs, in the cave itself.
The worst. He finds Johnny Betts, the American radio operator, dead.
Ow.
Garroted, with a thin wire. A very specific professional killing method. Silent, brutal.
The killer's signature.
Exactly. Metcalfe knows instantly it's the work of a skilled assassin, and that assassin is likely now hunting him.
He has to get out of Paris fast.
Desperate measures. He finds a dead Gestapo officer among the casualties from the bookshop. Fight a Standartenführer, a colonel.
He takes the uniform.
He does, puts it on. An incredibly risky move, but his only chance. He manages to connect with his planned evacuation pilot, a British flyer named Roger Scoop Martin.
And they need a plane.
They decide to steal one from a Nazi airfield.
This sounds insane.
It was. They drive out there, Metcalfe bold as brass in the stolen Gestapo colonel's uniform. Martin waits. Metcalfe finds the airfield commander, a Brigadier General Johannes Kohler.
And just bluffs his way through.
Completely. He launches into this furious tirade, accusing Kohler of incompetence, of delaying the Reich's glorious work, basically chewing him out using the authority of the uniform, while Kohler is flustered and distracted.
Kohler gets a plane ready.
A Junkers Ju-52 transport. Not exactly inconspicuous. They called it the Tante Ju, or less kindly, the corrugated coffin because of its metal skin.
Slow, noisy.
Very. But the bluff works. Metcalfe intimidates Kohler just enough. They manage to get into the Ju-52 and take off.
Flying a stolen German plane out of a German airfield through German-controlled airspace.
The sheer audacity is incredible. They head east. Their only possible refuge now is neutral Soviet Russia.
So Metcalfe makes it to Moscow, November 1940, but he's not landing triumphant. He's lost his network, his friends are dead, and he's probably deeply suspicious of Corky by now.
Absolutely. He arrives under this immense cloud. And Moscow itself, it's a completely different kind of pressure cooker than Paris.
How so? What did the sources say it was like?
It's this strange mix. You've got the outward symbols of power and history, the Golden Onion Domes, St. Basil's right there on Red Square, these huge, almost blindingly bright propaganda posters everywhere.
Promoting the 5-year plan, communism.
Right. Communism, Soviet power, plus electrification of the whole country, that kind of thing. Grandiose promises.
But underneath,
the sources stress this pervasive, almost palpable terror. The Great Purge of the 1930s wasn't ancient history. It was a fresh, raw wound. Fear was just etched on people's faces.
So when Metcalfe starts his official business, dealing with Soviet officials,
He feels it immediately. He meets people like Litvikov at the People's Commissariat of Foreign Trade. They're described as impassive, silent, watchful, scared to say the wrong thing, scared to stand out.
and they look at him, this wealthy Westerner,
With a mixture of envy, because he represents freedom, movement, wealth, and deep suspicion. Fear of contamination, almost.
He's trying to play the role, though, the legitimate businessman exploring trade opportunities.
Yes, using the Metcalfe Industries cover, trying to interest them in deals, knowing the Soviets desperately needed Western currency and technology.
But he knows he's being watched.
Instantly, the NKV details are obvious. Clumsy, almost theatrical.
NKVD being Stalin's secret police.
Exactly. The People's Commissariat of Internal Affairs.
Yeah.
And the clumsiness wasn't incompetence. It was deliberate. It was a warning.
Like a dog growling.
Precisely. We see you. We know you're foreign. Don't step out of line. It just reinforces that oppressive police state atmosphere.
But then someone else approaches him, not NKVD.
Right. This is a key moment. Metcalfe goes to the Bolshoi Theater to see Svetlana Baranova, dance in a ballet called The Red Poppy.
And he's approached there.
Yes. Not by the NKVD thugs, but by a GRU major.
Kundrov.
GRU, that's military intelligence, right? Different from the NKVD. Very different. And this distinction becomes incredibly important later. The GRU, military intelligence, was often rivals with the NKVD, the internal secret police who conducted the purges and spread the terror.
So Kundrov is different.
He's professional, speaks perfect English,
Yeah.
he's clearly intelligent and observant, and he cuts right to the chase. He knows Metcalfe is foreign, and he implies he knows the real reason Metcalfe is there isn't business, or even the German diplomat von Schisler. It's Lana.
The GRU had their own interests in foreigners and diplomats, presumably.
We're watching everyone, too, just maybe with a different agenda than the NKVD.
So Metcalfe finally gets to speak to Lana backstage at the Bolshoi.
And whatever facade she had maintained just crumbles. The sources say her arrogance vanishes, replaced by sheer terror.
She confesses her situation.
Yes. She tells him how much she hates Stalin, the system. She's seen people disappear, friends, colleagues. She talks about the awful social pressure, how families were forced to shun relatives who were purged, like catching a disease you couldn't risk getting near.
And the German diplomat, von Schisler, what was the real story there?
It was blackmail, pure and simple.
How?
Her father, General Mikhail Baranov. He had been a close friend of Marshal Tukhachevsky.
Tukhachevsky, one of the top generals executed in Stalin's 1937 military purge.
The very same. Stalin forced a confession that Tukhachevsky was plotting with the Germans. General Baranov, Lana's father, had also hated Stalin and likely made his views known in private circles. Von Schisler, the German diplomat, somehow got his hands on a dossier containing this information.
Damning information in Stalin's Russia.
Potentially fatal. So von Schisler wasn't some master spy manipulating Lana for intelligence. He was just using this leverage.
To force her into a relationship.
Exactly. According to Hilliard, Corky's man in Moscow, von Schisler was basically a mediocrity, weak, vain. He initially just wanted Lana as a beautiful mistress, a bauble, to show off and boost his status in Moscow's diplomatic scene. But the threat was deadly serious. He held her father's life in his hands.
Before this all comes to a head, Metcalfe needs to make contact with the American embassy. His handler there.
Right. Miss Hilliard. Corky's node in Moscow. They meet inside the embassy, but not just anywhere. They use the Keep.
The Keep.
A specially constructed secure room, soundproof, shielded against electronic eavesdropping, an acoustically engineered box for sensitive conversations.
And Hilliard has a warning for Metcalfe.
A serious one. The danger isn't just from the Soviets outside the embassy, it's also coming from inside.
Inside the American embassy.
Yes. This is where you see this really stark ideological divide within the American diplomatic corps and intelligence community in 1940.
What was the division?
Hilliard warns Metcalfe that some embassy staff, potentially high-ranking ones, are part of what he calls the hate Russia crowd.
Meaning anti-communist.
Virulently so. So anti-Bolshevik, so convinced that Soviet communism was the ultimate global threat that they were actually, quote, happy to help out Berlin.
Help the Nazis to stop the Soviets.
That was their twisted logic. They saw Nazi Germany, despite its own brutality, as the only power strong enough to destroy the Soviet Union. So they were actively undermining U.S. policy, working against any potential cooperation between the U.S. and the USSR, even against Hitler.
That's shocking. Working against their own government's interests.
It speaks volumes about the ideological intensity of the time, fear of communism overriding everything else for some people.
And Hilliard also confirms Metcalfe's assessment of von Schisler, right?
Yes. He tells Metcalfe that von Schisler is basically useless as an intelligence asset. He's not some potential anti-Nazi plotter Corky might have hoped for. He's just a pawn being manipulated himself.
Which means the original mission turn von Schisler is dead in the water.
Completely. And that forces Corky's hand. He reveals the real mission, the true, terrifying plan.
Wall SS Foul. The wolf trap.
Corky connects with Metcalfe again via the secure channel in the Keep. And he lays it out. This isn't about spying on Russia. It's about tricking Hitler into attacking Russia.
To save Britain.
To save Britain. Corky actually uses this classical reference. Athens sowed the discord between its enemies. The plan was to make the Soviet Union look like such an easy, tempting target that Hitler couldn't resist turning east.
And Metcalfe's job.
To deliver the bait. A set of forged documents, codenamed Die Wolfsfall. He has to pass these to von Schisler, using Lana as the conduit.
What was in these documents?
They were brilliant pieces of disinformation. They painted the Red Army as disastrously weak, a house of cards ready to collapse at the first push.
How? What weaknesses did they invent?
Catastrophic logistical problems, huge gaps in officer training after the purges, reliance on totally obsolete equipment, even things like suggesting their radio communications barely worked, forcing them to use couriers and telegraph wires. Just utter tempting vulnerability.
But just giving von Schussler forged papers, wouldn't the Germans be suspicious?
This is where the genius or the deviousness of Corky's plan really lies. It wasn't just the content, it was the packaging.
How are they packaged?
Parts of the documents were encrypted, specifically using the Soviet SUV-OOV code.
Okay. Why use the Soviet code?
Because the Germans had already broken the SUV-OOV code.
They had. How?
Earlier in the year, during the Winter War between Finland and Russia, the Finns had captured a burnt Soviet codebook and passed it to German intelligence. The Abwehr, German military intelligence, could read SUV-ORU traffic.
So, Corky gives Metcalfe documents encoded in a cipher the Germans think only the Russians are using, but which the Germans can actually read.
Precisely. If the documents were just handed over plain, German intelligence would scream disinformation. But because they arrive encrypted in SUV-ORV, and the Germans decrypt them themselves.
They think they've intercepted genuine, top-secret Soviet communications revealing fatal weakness.
Exactly. It gives the information unimpeachable authenticity in their eyes. It's validated by their own code breakers. Corky's ruthless logic was, weakness is provocative. They were deliberately making Russia look too weak to ignore, baiting Hitler's ambition.
So the plan is set. Pass the forged Wolfsfall documents via Lana to von Schussler, encoded so the Germans think they're real intercepts. But things immediately start to go wrong again. Very wrong.
Yeah, the operation enters this incredibly dangerous phase. The safety net just vanishes. It starts during that secure call between Metcalfe and Corky in the keep.
The line gets tapped.
Hilliard, who's facilitating the call, realizes it. He frantically signals to Metcalfe that the secure line is compromised, likely by that hate Russia faction inside the embassy Hilliard warned him about.
So the anti-Soviet elements in the U.S. embassy are listening in.
It seems so. Hilliard tells Metcalfe urgently, never use the embassy comms again. Use a dead drop for any future exchanges. The internal ideological battle has become an active threat to the operation.
And then the killings start again, the signature returns.
With terrifying speed, Roger Scoop Martin, the British pilot who flew Metcalfe out of Paris in the Ju-52, he's found murdered in Metcalfe's own hotel room in Moscow. Garroted. The same wire signature as Johnny Betts in Paris. After the murder, the NKVD conveniently searches Metcalfe's room, confiscating passports, gear. They were almost certainly tipped off, possibly by the same people who killed Martin.
So the killer is active in Moscow and potentially coordinating with the NKVD, or at least using them.
Or maybe manipulating them. Then it gets worse. Amos Hilliard, the embassy contact.
Corky's node.
Right. He manages to pass the actual Wolfsfall documents to Metcalfe. They use a dead drop behind a radiator in a public restaurant. It's successful. Moments later, Hilliard is found dead. In the restaurant.
Garroted.
Betts, Martin, Hilliard, all killed the same way. Metcalfe now has the documents, but he's completely isolated. He knows he's being hunted by the NKVD and by this incredibly skilled, ruthless internal killer who seems to be one step ahead.
He has to get the documents out and transmit them somehow.
He tries to make a scheduled rendezvous, likely to pass them off or get instructions, but it's an ambush. NKVD agents are waiting.
He escapes.
Just barely. The sources describe a desperate chase. Leaping from a moving streetcar, smashing through the door of a departing train. He realizes the lead NKVD agent pursuing him, this relentless, pale-eyed man named Ivanov, is exceptionally good.
How does he finally shake him?
He stumbles into this vast underground complex, one of the deep bomb shelters Stalin had built beneath Moscow. And down there, he finds this hidden community. Fugitives. People hiding from the purges from the NKVD. Intellectuals, artists, former officials, people living in the shadows. It's a really stark reminder of the terror Lana described, the reality beneath the propaganda.
But he still needs to connect with his technical support, the person who can handle the transmission or encoding.
Right. His contact is Chip Nolan, an FBI expert on loans, specializing in flaps and seals, document forgery, disguise, that sort of thing. Nolan actually created Metcalfe's original Eigen identity papers.
Where do they finally meet?
This is almost surreal. They meet outside Berlin, at a decoy airfield.
A decoy airfield?
Yeah, apparently it was this huge former movie studio lot that the Nazis had taken over. They'd built a completely fake town, fake hangars, dummy aircraft made of wood and canvas, all designed to fool Allied bombers into wasting their bombs there, instead of on real targets.
A Potemkin village for bombing runs. Incredible.
A bizarre theatrical setting for the final, devastating reveal.
Nolan. It was Nolan all along.
It was Nolan. He confesses everything. He was the killer. Betts, Hilliard, Martin, he killed them all with the Guro.
Why? What was his motive?
He admits he's part of that hate Russia crowd Hilliard warned about. He saw Metcalfe's mission anything that might inadvertently help the Soviets, even by diverting Hitler as treason. He genuinely believed a Nazi victory over the Soviet Union was preferable to the spread of Bolshevism.
So he sabotaged the operation from within.
Completely. He admits he found Metcalfe's hidden radio transmitter near Paris and gave the coordinates to the Germans, leading to the raid on the cave. He admits reporting Metcalfe's movements to the GRU in Moscow, likely hoping they'd arrest him. He was the one listening in on the secure call with Corky.
He saw himself as a patriot, stopping Metcalfe.
Yes, a twisted kind of patriotism, dedicated to ensuring a Nazi victory on the Eastern Front.
And now he's trying to kill Metcalfe.
He tries. There's a fight, a desperate struggle amidst the fake buildings and dummy planes of the decoy airfield. Nolan tries the garrote. There's gunfire. Metcalfe manages to survive and kills Nolan.
And in that moment, he realizes
The full extent of it. This internal network, led by Nolan, wasn't just trying to stop the mission, they were trying to eliminate him. But crucially, the Wolfsfall documents, the bait for Hitler, are still safe. Metcalfe has them.
he now understands the betrayals. But he needs to understand Corky's role. He confronts him, right, about Lana.
He does, likely through some emergency communication channel. He demands the truth. Was Lana always meant to be sacrificed?
And Corky's response.
Ice-cold confirmation. Corky admits that sacrificing Lana was always part of the calculation necessary to make the Wolfsfall documents utterly convincing to the Germans.
And when Metcalfe accuses him of manipulating his feelings for Lana, using their past.
Corky delivers perhaps the most chilling line in the entire account. I lied to you, Stephen, so you wouldn't have to lie to her.
Meaning?
Meaning, Corky intentionally rekindled Metcalfe's genuine love for Lana, knowing that authentic emotion would be the most effective tool to gain her trust. He weaponized Metcalfe's real feelings, counting on that bond to make Lana vulnerable and cooperative, right up until the moment of her necessary betrayal and sacrifice.
That's profoundly ruthless. Using genuine love as an operational tool.
It's the absolute epitome of Corky's greater good philosophy. The individual, even their deepest emotions, subordinate to the mission.
Why was her sacrifice so essential? Why did it have to be Lana?
Because the German High Command, Keitel, Schmundt, Canaris, they were skeptical. The Wolfsfall documents painted the Red Army as too weak. It smelled like a trap, like disinformation.
They needed something more.
They needed absolute proof the information was genuine. And what could be more convincing than catching the daughter of a famous Red Army general, who was also the mistress of a German diplomat, in the act of spying for Germany? Her capture, her confession under duress, that would validate the documents beyond doubt. Her sacrifice was the final, essential piece of authentication.
But the sources suggest Lana wasn't just a pawn. She understood more than they thought.
Far more. Metcalfe realizes this later. Lana had actually seen the Wolfsfall documents herself before passing them on. And because she knew the Soviet system, the military reality, she recognized the details, the scale of the weakness described had to be fake.
But she also saw their potential effect.
Yes. She called them an engraved invitation. She understood Hitler's psychology, his contempt for weakness. She knew he wouldn't see the reports as a warning, but as proof of a guaranteed, easy victory, a temptation he couldn't resist.
So she realizes her sacrifice isn't just something happening to her. It's necessary for the plan to succeed. It becomes her choice.
It seems so. She understands that saving her father, who Metcalfe and Kundrov plan to get out, and achieving the mission's goal, diverting Hitler, depends on her playing this final, fatal role. She agrees to the plan Metcalfe quickly puts together with Major Kundrov, the GRU officer.
What was the plan?
Lana allows Kundrov, the GRU man, to discover her espionage and report her to the NKVD as a spy working for von Schussler.
Why the NKVD, not the GRU?
Plausible deniability for Kundrov, perhaps. And the NKVD were the ones known for arrests and harsh interrogations. She goes willingly, in a sense, to Lubyanka prison, not as an unknowing victim, but as a conscious participant in the deception, a martyr.
And at Lubyanka.
She endures interrogation, likely torture, but eventually she confesses. She admits she was spying for Berlin, passing crucial intelligence the details from the forged Wolfsfall documents to our lover, von Schussler.
And this confession gets back to the Germans.
Critically, yes. There was apparently an Abwehr mole, a German intelligence asset, high up within the NKVD system specifically, an aide to an NKVD official named Rubishov. This mole, believing Lana was a genuine anti-Stalinist caught spying for Germany, ensures her confession and the intelligence she passed are immediately reported back to Berlin.
So her sacrifice is perfectly validated. The information seems doubly confirmed intercepted Soviet code, and now a confession from a high-profile spy.
Exactly. Back in Berlin, this is the final piece of the puzzle for Hitler's high command. The skepticism vanishes. Schmundt, one of the generals, supposedly declares, "The Russian colossus is a pig's bladder pricket and it will burst."
The bait is taken.
Hook, line, and sinker. Hitler's convinced. He famously exclaims, "We only have to kick in the door and the whole rotten structure will come crashing down." He gives the order.
Operation Barbarossa, June 22nd, 1941.
The invasion of the Soviet Union begins. The entire weight of the Wehrmacht shifts to the Eastern Front. Operation Sea Lion against Britain is shelved indefinitely. Corky's gamble, built on deception and sacrifice, has worked. Britain is saved.
But Metcalfe himself is still in danger. The NKVD is closing in. That agent, Ivanov.
Yes, the pale-eyed tracker. He finally corners Metcalfe and likely Lana's father, who Metcalfe was trying to extract. It looks like the end. They're on a bridge.
And then the most unexpected intervention happens.
Major Kundrov, the GRU officer. He appears on the bridge, and he doesn't arrest Metcalfe. He shoots the NKVD agent, Ivanov, his own supposed comrade in the Soviet security apparatus.
Why? What does he say?
He looks at the body, then at Metcalfe and Lana's father, and says something remarkable. An act of murder can be an act of kindness.
He saved them. But why? He works for the state.
He reveals his true feelings. He despises the Soviet system. He calls himself just a screw in the great guillotine. He admits he secretly uses his position within the GRU to help people anti-Stalin fugitives hiding underground.
Like the ones Metcalfe met in the bunker.
Exactly. He tells Metcalfe he's risking everything, his career, his life, to help them escape. And his reason is profound.
What reason?
He says, heroes are in short supply in the Soviet Union, and they are getting fewer by the day. We need more of them, not fewer. He sees the state consuming its own people, its best people, like the mythical Ouroboros snake eating its tail, and he refuses to let it happen this time.
So his loyalty isn't to the state or even the GRU versus the NKVD. It's a personal, moral stand against tyranny.
It seems entirely that. An act of individual conscience, of recognizing and preserving something valuable, heroism, decency in a system designed to crush it. It's this moment of completely unexpected humanity amidst the brutality. Okay, let's roll to 50 years. It's August 1991 again. The man who engineered that incredible deception in 1940 is back. Ambassador Stephen Metcalfe, facing Moscow's second potential collapse.
Right, part 4, the 1991 coup attempt. And Metcalfe isn't just a bystander this time, he gets involved.
He does. And what's fascinating is how his past experience informs his actions. He sees the tanks, hears about the emergency committee, but he recognizes that the real power might not lie with the plotters themselves.
He understands the Russian system, the hidden levers.
Exactly. He realizes the coup plotters, the hardliners, need the blessing, the quiet approval of one key figure, the ultimate insider, a man known only as the Dirizor.
The conductor? Stepan Menelov?
Stepan Menelov. This figure is described as operating completely in the shadows. No public profile, no press conferences.
Yeah.
But utterly crucial.
Why? What power did the conductor actually wield?
He controlled the deep infrastructure of the state, the logistics, communications networks, energy grids, transportation, but most importantly, the loyalty of certain key KGB internal security units and specific strategically placed commands within the Soviet military.
So the nuts and bolts required to actually run a coup and maintain control afterward.
Precisely. Without Menelov's quiet nod, without his ensuring the lights stayed on, the phones worked, and certain troops stayed loyal or stayed neutral, the hardliners' coup couldn't sustain itself. It would just fizzle out, lack the operational backbone.
And Metcalfe decides he needs to reach Menelov.
Yes, but his mission is totally off the books. The White House is paralyzed, remember? Terrified of the nuclear codes, Metcalfe acts alone, driven by his own history.
He can't stand by and watch a return to Stalinism.
The sources strongly suggest that.
Okay.
The echoes of 1940, the terror he witnessed, the sacrifices made, he feels he has to intervene personally.
How does he even get to Menelov, this shadowy figure?
Through old contacts, presumably. He manages to secure a meeting, and the location is thick with irony. They meet inside the Kremlin, in the very building where Lavrenti Beria, Stalin's secret police chief, was himself arrested after Stalin's death in 1953 for plotting his own coup.
History repeating itself, and Metcalfe confronts Menelov.
He does. He urges him not to back the coup plotters. He warns against plunging Russia back into the darkness, the isolation, the brutality of the Stalinist era he remembers so vividly.
What's Menelov's argument? How does the conductor justify potentially supporting the coup?
He gives the classic argument of the autocrat, the strongman. Stability. He tells Metcalfe, essentially, you Westerners don't understand Russia. Chaos is the ultimate enemy.
Order above all else, even if it's oppressive order.
Exactly. The most dangerous thing is chaos, Menelov argues. He sees the coup as a way to restore firm, centralized control to prevent the Soviet Union from disintegrating, which he views as the greater danger.
How does Metcalfe counter that? He has no official power here.
He uses moral authority, his historical perspective. He argues that stability built on fear, on a throne of bayonets, is never truly stable. He warns that the Soviet economy, already crumbling, can't survive the renewed isolation that supporting the coup would bring. It's a high-stakes appeal to reason and consequence.
But was it just Metcalfe's words, or was there more leverage?
The sources indicate another crucial factor was working behind the scenes: internal pressure, applied by a very familiar name,
Kundrov.
General Kundrov, a GRU major who saved Metcalfe in 1940. 50 years later, he's now a three-star general in the GRU. Still cynical about the system, perhaps, but now in a position of significant influence.
So Kundrov, the insider who hated the system, helped again.
It appears so. He was an old friend of Metcalfe's by this point, their paths having crossed over the decades. Kundrov likely used his own influence within certain military circles, and perhaps had a quiet word with Menelov himself, reinforcing Metcalfe's warnings about the risks of bloodshed and isolation.
A pincer movement, almost.
Yep.
Metcalfe's external diplomacy, Kundrov's internal pressure.
That seems to be the picture the sources paint. And it works. Menelov ultimately decides not to give the coup plotters his essential logistical blessing. He doesn't actively oppose them, maybe, but he withholds the support they need to use decisive force against the growing civilian protests led by Yeltsin.
And without the conductor's backing.
The coup loses momentum. It stalls. The plotters waver, their support evaporates, and the whole thing collapses within days.
Metcalfe changed history, again, preventing a return to hardline rule.
It certainly looks that way. He played key, albeit unofficial and unseen, role in steering Russia away from that path, stabilizing the situation at a moment of extreme danger.
And the story brings us back, finally, to Lana, to the cost.
Yes. Metcalfe gets confirmation of her fate and her understanding years later. First, apparently, at the Yalta Conference in 1945.
Yalta, with Roosevelt, Churchill, Stalin.
He was there, likely in some diplomatic capacity, and he runs into Kundrov again, who was then working security or intelligence for Stalin's delegation.
And Kundrov tells him.
He confirms Lana's sacrifice, but he adds this haunting line. Her sacrifice was greater than we ever expected, implying it wasn't just her death, but the crucial role her confession played in validating the Wolfsfeld deception that fooled Hitler.
And then there was the final gift, years after the war.
Much later, yes. Delivered through the diplomatic pouch, implying official channels were somehow involved, maybe through Kundrov's influence again. It was a package.
Containing.
One of a matched pair of antique dueling pistols. They had belonged to her father, General Baranov. Lana had apparently written a final letter before her execution in Lubyanka, arranging for Metcalfe to eventually receive this pistol.
A pistol they believed Pushkin might have used.
That was the family lore associated with them. Highly symbolic.
What did the gift signify, do you think?
It's incredibly poignant. It confirms her father was also dead, likely perished in the system. It symbolizes the end of that old, perhaps more honorable Russia her father represented. But most of all, it's Lana reaching out from the past, a token of her loyalty, her understanding of the mission, maybe even her love, proving she knew her sacrifice was necessary for the greater cause, even though it was engineered by Metcalfe's own side.
A confirmation that she chose her fate in the end.
In a profound way, yes. Choosing to die as an enemy spy to save the world, while sending a message of enduring connection to the man she loved, whose mentor had orchestrated her death.
So pulling all these threads together from the sources, Metcalfe's legacy is complex.
Extremely. He undeniably influenced history at two critical moments, diverting the Nazi war machine in 1940, preventing a totalitarian relapse in 1991. But both successes were built, ultimately, on the calculated sacrifice of Lana Baranova. It's a stark illustration of the brutal calculus often involved in shaping world events. #outro. When you look at the whole story laid out in these sources, the life of Stephen Metcalfe really forces you to grapple with some tough questions, doesn't it? About the nature of espionage, sacrifice, the greater good.
Absolutely. Especially the contrast between Corky's actions and Lana's, or even Kundrov's. Corky's plan, Wolf's Fall, was technically brilliant, maybe, but its success hinged entirely on weaponizing Metcalfe's love for Lana. A chillingly cold calculation.
Right. That the potential survival of Western democracy justified engineering a scenario where the woman Metcalfe loved would inevitably be sacrificed. It's pure utilitarianism, taken to an extreme.
And think of the others, Johnny Betts, Roger Martin, Amos Hilliard, just written off as necessary losses, ballast, as the sources sometimes imply. Where do you even draw the line between justifiable actions in wartime or in a crisis and means that become simply unforgivable?
It's a perennial question in intelligence history. But then you have the counterpoint in Kundrov. He's arguably the most fascinating figure in the whole narrative, besides Metcalfe himself.
The cynical GRU officer who keeps doing the right thing.
Exactly. He calls himself a screw in the Great Guillotine. He sees the horror of the Soviet system from the inside, probably benefits from it in his career, and yet he repeatedly risks everything.
To save Metcalfe, to save Lana's father, to push back against the coup in '91, not for ideology, not for Russia, seemingly.
But for something personal, a sense of decency, a recognition of heroism. His actions seem driven by an internal moral compass that somehow survived decades inside that brutal system.
And the fact that he rises to become a three-star general by 1991 suggests that maybe those individual acts of conscience aren't always futile, that decency can sometimes persist, even gain influence within corrupt systems.
Perhaps. It complicates the narrative beautifully.
Yeah.
He's not a simple hero. He's compromised. He's part of the machine, yet he acts heroically at key moments.
Which brings us to that final provocative thought. Kundrov's reason for helping Metcalfe back in 1940. That line.
Heroes are in short supply in the Soviet Union, and they're getting fewer by the day. We need more of them, not fewer.
So here's something for you, the listener, to think about. If state systems, particularly authoritarian ones, are often structured almost by design to identify and neutralize or co-opt their potential heroes, what is it that allows someone like Kundrov, an insider, to defy that?
Yeah, what's the trigger? What makes a seasoned player within the system suddenly risk it all? Not for personal gain, but for an ideal. Or simply because they recognize something valuable, heroism, maybe that the system itself wants to crush.
Is the survival of freedom, or just basic human decency, sometimes less about grand strategies and institutions and more dependent on these unpredictable individual acts of rebellion from within?
Something to mull over. An insider choosing kindness or heroism even when it looks like murder from another angle.
Definitely food for thought. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.